What do you do when you find yourself not at harmony? How do you get back where your compass is being pulled by this peace and love?
I just recently had this experience where I started to feel like, oh, yeah, I got this. And then all of a sudden I started getting restless again. And I tied it back to needing more whimsy, the random and the precious. Like it's things that kind of reharmonize music, breathing, being in nature, those kinds of things. And yeah, whimsy. There's something about whimsical that I just feel like tends to bring me back to what my truth is without getting lost in the mire of like what life is supposed to look like or who I'm supposed to be.
Welcome to another edition of Chasing the Timeless. Today I've got a really cool friend, Katy Daixon Wimer, and we're just going to see where we go with this.
I love it.
Okay, so this is usually I ask people about their background to get started, but I think I'm just going to dive right in with you.
Great.
What motivates you in life? What inspires you?
Oh my gosh.
Coming off hard right from the very beginning.
I love it. I love it. That's my jam. What motivates me? Honestly, like human nature. I am unbelievably inspired by people, and in particular, people in relationships. So, of all kinds. Lovers, friends, family members.
All right. So I had the amazing opportunity of watching you and your husband sing love songs to each other at a gathering. And it was so cute and beautiful and silly and interspersed with stories. And you did this publicly in front of a bunch of people that came there. What was that like for you?
Incredibly vulnerable. It was the first time we had ever done something like that, and it was terrifying and exhilarating all at the same time. I loved the intimacy of it, and our goal to kind of tell our story at the same time that we were doing the songs was partly to actually keep us grounded, so that we knew that this wasn't just a performance, that this actually really mattered to us. Like it's like being naked in front of people. And actually, my husband just recently read an article about how music is in the same part of the brain that recognizes one's nakedness. And so it just made everything make so much sense for why that's terrifying, because you're like baring your insides, just exposing.
Well, that's really fascinating. And if you go to my website, you'll find out that I've done art modeling and very vulnerable, and I love music. And I haven't performed music in front of people, but it's okay. My favorite band is the Grateful Dead. And I've learned that, Bob Weir, who died recently, had terrible stage fright before he went on. And it was for 30 years,
Yes.
every single performance. And he knows that these are people that are there to love on him.
Yeah.
But you're getting ready to share where you are at that moment. And it may be a different place than you were last time you talked. And maybe you don't even know what you're bringing up.
Yeah. Yep. I still, from the moment that I was a kid and on stage, I get the same exact feelings right before it, which, could be attributed to butterflies. I shake. I kind of get like, tight in my chest. But I also am all about sharing myself. And so I honestly, I think that's a sign of at least practicing humility, if not being humble, when you don't feel like you're perfect. You're nervous because you don't know what you're going to say, what you're going to sing, what you're going to reveal. Like it just, it's in the moment.
I think if you're performing and you're holding back or not, you're trying to present a certain image that works on one kind of pop rock level. But if you really want to be really inspiring to your audience, you have to be willing to learn about yourself
Oh yeah.
as you're performing.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, because it's a good moment to check yourself and say like, am I putting on a mask here? Am I trying to be something that I'm not just to impress these people? You know, like can I just be a complete dork and, you know, just show my personality as it is? Like just that's enough.
There's some dorky moments in there, but it was like
Oh,
it
100%.
was lovely because it just showed your relationship with your husband, and it's like
Yeah.
that is so cool to be free to be dorky.
Oh yeah, we talk about that all the time. Some of the stuff we do in our living room, if we could record it, I think would really get people's busting their ribs laughing because we're just ridiculous together.
Yeah. And he talked about being inspired by humans and people's relationships. So outside of like that experience of presenting, where else does that fit into your life?
I feel like it also shows up in relationship to oneself too. So it's kind of like how we is that what you meant by your question?
Whatever you want it to take it as.
Oh, yeah, I think it's just like we learn a lot about ourselves in relationship with ourselves and other people. And I think that's the inspiring part is kind of like you don't know where you're going to grow or how or what new creations might come out of you just from being around other humans and witnessing, you know, how we function and how we approach life and different things like that, how we create as individuals too. So yeah, I just find so much potential there. I'm also really inspired by nature. So that's another big one.
And they kind of go hand in hand. Like,
Yeah.
talk more about your relationship with yourself and how that, like, where is it now? Where does it come from? Where is it going? Like, how you do that. Like, for me, it's nature's really important
Yeah.
part of that. Like,
It feels big. My relationship with myself is at a place now that is much healthier than probably when I was in my 20s. It's been an evolution for sure. And not striving, I'm practicing getting back to like being more in touch with my inner kid self, you know, more playfulness and joy and lightness and silliness and that dork, letting that dork fly free, you know, in front of others and with my own self. But yeah, my journey has been one of a lot of self-reflection and connection with what grounds me in order to not lose myself.
yeah. I had a recent podcast where somebody's makes sculptures and art for a living, and he came out of a corporate job when he realized that, you know, my kid self really loved to do these things, but for some reason, society kind of like tries to force us into some kind of what's the right definition of success.
Yeah, that one is a big one because my whole life, my whole adult life, it was like, well, I really want to work for people who like need my skills. And then at the same time, doing that for other people is taking away from doing it for myself sometimes or growing my own business. And so I have waffled between like needing that validation and then having to practice doing that validation for myself. And yeah, it's hard sometimes because a lot of times others kind of want to box you into
Okay.
something. And I don't want to be in a box. I hate boxes. Even my own self-created ones, I will break out of them because I'm just so rebellious like that. Like, nope, okay, this has become too rigid. Like, need something different.
So, so really, when you're finding yourself, you're not finding a tangible thing that you can define. You're defining a way of living that can go anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the possibilities for ourselves are endless. And I truly I truly believe wholeheartedly and have lived and experienced this now for maybe the past, I don't know, since maybe 2020 is when it felt like it started, but breaking out of beliefs or patterns or habits, or I think all of that stuff can, like literally when people say you can wake up and be anything you want, I actually believe that. I do believe you can get out of your own way and you can choose a different way. Like every time. I just it's hard, but it's fun because then
Hmm.
you just learn new things about yourself. You learn what you're capable of. You shift relationships because of it. Maybe sometimes not for great reasons, but sometimes for awesome reasons, and it's all worth it.
Yeah. So COVID,
Yeah,
you're thinking, 2020, and that was an opportunity to redefine yourself.
yeah, it really was because at the time I was kind of at the right around the peak of my photography career, and a bunch of weddings got canceled. And it was during that moment that I realized I wasn't enjoying shooting them anymore and that I had a choice of how to make my money. Like it didn't have to look that way anymore. And so that was a huge moment to shift, like what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my business to look like? And then it's kind of been, a little bit of a challenging and playful journey all at one time, getting to the point that I'm at now, but it's still evolving.
Yeah. So talk about some of the things you've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years.
Um, Making a lot of changes in my primary relationship. So Dale and I doing that performance was very powerful for us after a lot of work that we had done on our relationship. So that was at the forefront, starting around COVID. And then also just with myself, noticing, like I said, where I was getting in my own way. And so this last year, I've been taking a certification to become a somatic educator and facilitator for women. And in that education, we're learning how to like recognize internalized misogyny, and how the patriarchy, you know, still kind of controls women in a
Hmm.
lot of ways, and then how women use that against other women and stuff like that. So first it was breaking down all of the yucky stuff in my relationship, which then led me to be like, how can I be
Yeah.
a better partner and a better partner with myself too? So
And you've done journaling sessions, helping people do journaling
yep.
and other events in the community to explore their creative
Yeah.
subconscious hidden sides. And
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first I do actually feel strongly that that one of the first steps for really like becoming a better friend and partner to oneself is to just like ask yourself more questions, to get curious about your own, way of being in the world. And so I've been journaling since I was a little kid. And then when I became much more introspective and more curious about myself, that's when I actually started generating questions. And then, yeah, turn that into guided journaling for folks. Other stuff I like to play around with, somatic dance. So, kind of learning what comes up when we're moving our bodies in ways that normally we wouldn't, because that comes with a lot of stigma and
so, what is
expectations attached.
somatic dance?
So, somatic dance is it's a fun form of embodiment that goes beyond just like meditation and breath. It's also ways to kind of recognize your body in space and what it's doing, and how it kind of like a stuff starts to come up in people, like you'll learn really quickly where it is that you might hold yourself back because you're worried about how you might be perceived in the way you're moving. So It's both for playfulness and for checking yourself and some of the rigid beliefs that you hold about how you are as a body.
God, that stuff is so restrictive,
Yeah.
and wondering how people are perceiving you is the biggest lie I think that people push on us. Like, well, what are people going to think?
Yeah. Right.
Or you've been a certain way, and you like during COVID, I decided I really like leggings because they're comfortable. I like the style. Sometimes I would wear nail polish, and in the beginning, I was so worried. Like, oh, people know me the previous way,
Mm.
and what are they gonna think when they see me being different? And that concern about what other people think prevents me from being in touch with my natural way of being.
Yes. Yeah, your natural expression, for sure. I know, because we live in a society that has like these what what society deems as clear, but like rules of like they're very black and white. It's like there's masculine and there's feminine and this is how they operate and that's it. And it's just all a lie because we're both and we're all things and we're nothing and we're you
Mhm.
know.
um, so we live in a small town in southern Wisconsin in a county that's mostly conservative,
Yeah.
but the city is a university town. So there's dabbles of liberal pockets here,
Hmm.
but nothing like Madison, nothing like you'd find on the West Coast. How long have you lived in Whitewater?
Since 2005.
Okay.
Long time.
Yeah. Um,
And that's actually what I found very appealing about the city was the fact that it was both a mix of tradition and progress.
mhm,
I feel like both are important.
mhm. Yeah. And I find that in this town, people tend to keep their politics quiet when they're in public
Mm.
because it's small enough that you bump into people enough. You're at school events together, and it's like,
Everybody tries to be
but
respectful.
everybody tries to be respectful.
Yeah.
You can go back to your smaller friend group and bitch about whatever you want to bitch about there.
Yeah.
But in public, around town, it's a little bit more like we know that there's different
Oh, yeah.
people, but there's a lot of more respect, I think, here than you would find in some other towns that are more leaning one way or the other.
I had never thought about it like that, but that's true. That's true. You don't feel a lot of, there's not, I don't know if hate's the right word, that feels strong, but there's not like a lot of maybe pushing of agendas. It doesn't seem
I would use hate.
as much. Okay. There's not a lot
I
of
mean, you
hate.
don't have to. I mean, I think there is that, but I think pushing agendas is probably a broader, encompassing term.
Though I suppose that kind of, brings me to a thought about as part of my certification that I'm getting, we're talking a lot about, like I said, internalized misogyny and patriarchy and stuff like that. And I'm starting to feel like, is this a voice that I want to have? Is, the dismantling of patriarchy, but then sometimes that feels like you have to be louder. And then that's when that whole perception comes in like, well, I don't want to be that girl
Mhm.
who's just like extra loud about it. And at the same time, it's getting old. So it's like, I would love it if it would change, and for things to change, you got to talk about it a lot. So I don't, it's a struggle. You wonder sometimes like, should we keep quiet to keep the peace or should we be louder?
Interesting. That gets into the whole confrontation versus falling back and being small.
Yeah.
But there's skills there where you can go
Yeah.
across, be assertive. I've had people tell me like the things I like about you is that you aren't afraid to say something that might offend somebody. And I think my rules that I try to live by, I'm not always going to get it right at all. But is there taking offense at what I say all their responsibility and their problem? Or is there something that I could have done better at how I communicated my concern or my voice in a way that leaves space open for somebody else to actually hear me and see it as a learning experience? And me, I think one thing is, am I going in thinking I know everything, or I'm going in just to communicate my thoughts and try to learn a little bit about where they're coming from too? Yeah.
I think that I have this belief that truth resonates, and not that we need to break down truth in this moment, but I do think that one's truth resonates. And so if you are coming from a true place within yourself that is not forcing an agenda, forcing someone to change their mind, trying to believe that you are just 100% right and everybody else is wrong or whatever, I think when it comes from that place, people will receive it fine no matter what. And if they have a reaction and you still feel like it came from a deep place of your personal truth that is not to be anything other than just being yourself, their reaction is absolutely their responsibility. And that's usually something that they'll just have to look at in themselves. Like, why did that charge you so much? You know, what's in you that ruffled your feathers so much?
All right, I'm going to take you down a little path here, down the road of truth.
Okay, fun.
And I think I'm always learning a little bit more about what I understand as truth. And I want to, before I espouse my thoughts of it, how do you recognize truth?
Oh, you can feel it. You know, like when it's the end of the night and you're just about getting ready for bed and you get that feeling of like, oh yeah, okay. Like I'm going to lay down, I'm going to sleep. That kind of like peace that washes over you. That's what I feel like truth resonates as, is like a settling in one's being, where there's not a feeling of sinking, and there's also not a feeling of like exhilaration. It's a settling. It kind of makes you feel like you can exhale. That's what I think a truth is.
And what is that? So it's a feeling. Is it just a feeling in your body, or is there some metadata in your perception of it that gives it more meaning?
I think it's felt in the body first, and then after that we give it meaning.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think truth comes from just feeling it, being at peace and still, because I think that's the core of the universe, and the core of energy isn't winning, it isn't judging, it isn't excelling or feeling like you're not doing the right thing, or it's just a stillness, a peace, it's love. And when you feel that, I think no matter what you do or what you say, if you're honestly just holding that and following that, you should never second guess what you're doing is right or wrong.
Absolutely.
Like
I totally agree.
Like that's the truth.
Yep.
And I also see the truth. I mean, we feel it in our body, but I think we have to be careful to give it any meaning other than just, this is the truth.
Right.
Like once you start giving meaning to it, then it's not a message coming from this space of energy. It's coming from our human mind, which is
Takes it to a different level.
full of traps.
Yeah, yeah, it can. And it can also turn into creativity or something like that as well. So it can be taken somewhere for sure. But yeah, you're right. And actually, my husband and I were just talking about this, was it yesterday? Where that sort of the truth of each of us might differ slightly, right? But then it's like if it feels right to you and you just own that and you're living your life that way, then that connects us to the greater energetic frequency that's in the universe, and then it's like all of us just living our truth together.
Yeah, it's all one truth, but yet we're each unique and serving a different purpose and have different, I don't want to say what's your purpose in life, but we have maybe natural tendencies or natural directions that we can't necessarily define, but just an impulse to be this way or an impulse to do this thing. And that's what makes it so special, that there's so many billions of people and different ways of experiencing and knowing that I have the answers. It's like I know what works for me, but it's so easy to try to think, well, yes, this is how the world is. This is what you're supposed to experience or pursue. And it's like, you don't know. That's not for us to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like we are all various expressions of the universe.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
What do you do to when you find yourself not at harmony? Your body's just feeling like, I know something's off. You don't know how long you've been feeling this way, but like, how do you get back on where your compass is being pulled by this peace and love?
I just recently had this experience where I started to feel like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm living in my truth again. I'm feeling really good. Everything just feels, it's that, when people talk about like, oh, live in alignment, that's what I believe alignment to be, is like when you are truly expressing from your personal truth. And then all of a sudden I started getting restless again. And I tied it back to needing more whimsy. Like, just like the random and the precious and the, which I suppose could be creative, but I feel like it's things that kind of reharmonize music, breathing, being in nature, those kinds of things. And yeah, whimsy. There's something about whimsical that I just feel like tends to bring me back to what my truth is without getting lost in the mire, I guess is the word that's coming to my mind, lost in the mire of like what life is supposed to look like or who I'm supposed to be. So usually that means like be in community, or sometimes it looks like you need to be with yourself if you've been around people too much or something. But yeah, community, like I said, music, listening to it, feeling it. Yeah, deep connection with nature.
Yeah, and just
touching a tree.
Just having the intention to get back.
Yeah, noticing it.
Just noticing
helps.
it. Yeah, noticing like I'm not there, and not feeling like you can do something that's going to create this, excuse me, this outcome with me, but just here are things that I can do, and I'm going to just be open. And the more diverse things you do and see things you've never seen before.
Oh, yeah.
Is just so enriching.
Yes.
And you aren't wasting your time if you go to some event that you actually hated.
Yeah, totally. I think that's what I mean by whimsy, is like change it up, introduce something random and just see what happens.
That's
little
so,
experiments.
That's so scary for some people.
Oh, yeah, it's terrifying. And I'm definitely one to talk. Like I love a good predictability. in life. And then all of a sudden I realize, oh, okay, now it's becoming a little stagnant because it's too predictable.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, oh, okay. I always call it my big girl pants. Time to put the big girl pants on and change it up. What
Uh-huh.
am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the biggest change up thing you've done? Or does anything stick out of something that like
Um, Honestly, there was like a pattern in my relationship with my husband
mm,
that was not good. And I knew that it was part of contributing to issues we were having. And I asked my best friend if she would be my accountability buddy. And instead of continuing the pattern with him, I reached out to her and I said, this is what I want to do right now. This
mm-hmm.
is what I want to say. This is how I feel like reacting, you know, and she would kind of be with me and talk with me while I was sort of going through that. And then, you know, she would help me decide, like, is this actually something you should address? Or is it maybe you just need the space, you know, before you go to him or whatever? And it's kind of like breaking an addiction, honestly. And so that's probably one of the hardest things that because it's like my default mode. It comes from conditioning
Yeah.
throughout my entire life and maybe what I witnessed with my parents or whatever, past lifetimes. I believe in past lifetimes. So that was a huge thing I did to change things up because I knew it would be healthier for me in the long run and then hopefully healthier for the two of us. And it proved right.
Patterns are something that it's so useful to identify your patterns. And even if you can get somebody else to tell you what your patterns are,
Yeah.
and you may not want to hear it.
Mm.
And I know my reaction would be to be defensive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because our ego wants to hold on to that. That's what it knows.
Mm-hmm.
And to be something different is hard.
Yeah. And then, so in a relationship, I'm assuming like this, you don't even have to communicate it with your partner, but both people know like this isn't where we want to be.
Mm.
And then coming forward and saying, I want to do this better. And I want to tell you what I'm thinking, even if it's negative stuff, but knowing that I'm telling you this because I want to change it. That's so powerful.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very powerful and it's incredibly connecting and also, yeah, like you said, it's challenging and scary because then not only are you end up having to change something about yourself, but then your relationship is changing and you don't realize the ways that you benefited maybe from that person being in that pattern, you know, or the two of you being in that dynamic. And, you know, so then you start to see things shift that maybe you didn't necessarily want to, but it's healthier that way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and yeah, like you said, hearing you want to get defensive, but you know, it was like after a while with hearing my husband say the same thing to me in different iterations, I was finally like, what is he meaning by this? Like, what is in me that this keeps being what he's saying? Cause I would say like, I don't know what you mean by that. Like, I don't see that. I don't feel that. I don't know what you mean. And eventually I was like, oh, okay. I see. That's my side of the equation here is.
I think, excuse me, in my relationship, I often hear, you know, coming from a legal background and public administration background, the words, and it's like, okay, I can understand exactly what you're thinking and trying to say by deciphering your words. And my wife may say, well, I use that word, but that's not what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that I'm not right. I'm not the right one to say well, this is how language is used and this is how people communicate, and realize that there's lots of different ways
Oh, yeah.
people communicate, and wanting to learn how the other person communicates rather than trying to change how they communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. That's huge, and probably always going to be a work in progress, because I'm the exact same. There's a lot of times where stuff just doesn't land, you know, both ways.
Yeah, right.
And it can be incredibly frustrating. But it's like, okay, this is an opportunity to learn again. Like, all right, where are we at? Like, what are you meaning when you say that? You know, like, and I think there's also, going back to the felt sense of things, I think there's part of that too that we miss in communication, is like, what's not being said? What's like resonating between you? Oftentimes, most of the time, if you're fighting, instead of completely avoiding and going opposite directions and, like, you know, leaving the house for a long period of time or something, fighting is usually indicative of the fact that you want to be close. You're trying to create connection. You're just missing it. And so when we realized that, it changed a lot, because it was like, okay, I know we both actually want love and tenderness and joy and connection and feeling each other right now, but there's something in the way. What's the thing in the way?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is neat. What else do you want to talk about?
Your art. Although I know you're interviewing me, but I just, like, got really curious about your art when you talked about, like, some things that you have done. You said with your body.
Like modeling,
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up with, well, kind of middle school and stuff, some trauma around my body, and I was really self-conscious with stuff. And like one day, probably in my late 20s, I was like looking at some art, and you know, seeing and trying to imagine myself as the model in that painting or sculpture, whatever, and thinking, well, I don't know if I could do that. And then the question came in, like, why? Like, why would I feel uncomfortable doing that? Because I appreciate the art, I recognize it, but I'd be concerned about what people in society or friends or people would say about that. And so, or just how I would, you know, perceive myself. So I decided to apply to become a model for art classes, just to force myself into what would be uncomfortable situations, to kind of just like force myself to see it,
Yeah.
and put that mirror right up in front of me. And I realized that it's drawing a human body is extremely difficult and requires lots of close observation, because we're so intimate with how people look. You can draw a dog easily because people aren't going to notice, well, that angle on that bone doesn't look natural. It's, you know, or physical things. It's easier to not have everything lined up perfectly right, and people aren't going to say, well, that's wrong. But with the human body, it's a real training for artists that's been around for a long time. And so it's useful to have models, and it's hard to find people willing to be vulnerable like that. And so the artists really appreciate it. And I feel it's hard work. I mean, you get sore, and you have to recognize, like, when we're just sitting like this, it doesn't really matter how you sit, because you can always kind of shift around and move without even thinking about it. But with different poses, if it's a longer pose, you get there and you have to think, okay, am I in a spot where I'm not using my muscles too much to hold myself this way?
Oh my gosh.
And, you know, sometimes I'd couple minutes into the pose, if it's like a 40-minute pose or something, I might say, you know what, everybody, I know you've all started, but I'm going to have to shift because I know this isn't going to work. So I really apologize. And everybody's, of course, really supportive. So there's knowledge of that,
Yeah.
appreciation of other art, and knowing that I'm not a visual artist, but it's my way to contribute
That's awesome.
to the art community. So that's kind of.
So did that kind of get you to a place where it was less about, how you're being aesthetically pleasing and was more about like, now this is just functionality of like the way I'm sitting and how I feel in my body while I'm doing this, because you also want to be comfortable. Did that kind of help you get past the like self-consciousness?
I think just doing it and knowing like, well, I've done this before and it was fine. And so I'm going to do it.
You're like, I survived.
I survived.
And I love how you had brought up that, you like to, because it's kind of what we touched on earlier about making yourself uncomfortable in a way. That's where growth happens, is in that discomfort. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think a lot about shadow work. Like,
what's that?
So shadow work is like everything that we have kind of like shoved down inside of us, both like what would be considered positive and negative, things that maybe we were shamed for, but then it's also things that we pedestal that we just don't want to own about ourselves because it might be, scary, or we're afraid of being too much or taking up too much space or something. And that's kind of what that makes me think of, is putting yourselves in situations where most of the time that's kind of how somatic dance works, is like that those shadow pieces start to come out, where all of a sudden then you realize like, oh, okay, actually, I judge myself in this way, or this way when I'm doing this particular thing, because that is what I might have been shamed for as a kid, mm-hmm. or what somebody in the society, told me I couldn't be or shouldn't be or something like that. And I think it's like a really quick way to kind of like, I don't know. I always think of it as like beefing up your own self resume. It's like, I'm actually I'm all these things. I'm not just this one,
Yeah. And when you find yourself, you don't have to understand what's happening, but you can find yourself in a situation where maybe you were shamed at some point with it, and you don't have to make that connection in your head. Your subconscious makes it for you, and you feel resistant. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where really being aware of as much as you can about why am I feeling this right now?
Yeah.
And then having the courage to go in and look at it, mm-hmm. and understand it, and maybe even feel more fear, or it's harder or more traumatic. But I think there's a way to go into the hardest of past experiences and traumas and fears and parts. I mean, it's our own mind, right? Like, that's us. So there's this part of us that's outside of our emotions and practices, that's just kind of observing neutrally.
Yeah, totally.
But we don't often identify ourselves through that, or even recognize what that is, because we're so consumed with everything that our emotions and our body and society is putting in front of us. So when we're faced with some kind of resistance or fear to something, it's okay to keep looking and saying, well, what is this? Where is it? Like, how does it feel? Like, where is that feeling coming from? Mm-hmm. What is it saying? And the more you get into it, and the closer you get, the more you realize that there's nothing there. It's just a figment of our imagination, a belief. It's just a belief.
Right.
When you try to like
Yeah.
pin it down at the most minute level, it's like, that's it.
Yeah. But then there's also like freedom in that, because once you get there, you're like, oh, okay. Like this resistance that I'm feeling is not actually because I'm being chased by a bear,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
because there is a literal fear that can, really be real. Like, oh,
yeah,
shoot, I need to take action on this. I'm
yeah.
being chased. And then most of the time, like, oh, okay, I can kind of like release this grip on this thing a little bit,
Yeah, it doesn't,
free the self.
it's not you. It's just something that you hold on to. And then it's like, okay, I can let go of it, and it can dissipate. It's not a thing that's, I'm going to take it and put it on a shelf here. And we sometimes do that with things and emotions. We'll take an idea and stuff
And
it
set this
here,
aside.
put
Yeah.
it here, but we still see it as a real thing. Or I'm not going to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not until we actually look at it that there's nothing scary about it in the minute looking at it, and it's just a mess of stuff that, the more you get to know it, the less real it becomes.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, there's like a kind of a befriending nature that sort of happens, and I think that's ultimately what leads to integration. It's just sort of like, oh yeah, okay, that's a thing. Hi. Like you live inside me, cool. And then like let's move on.
All right, so
It's like taking everything seriously and then not. It's
yeah,
like really giving it space to exist and then not letting it control you. Yeah.
yeah, and not caring where it goes, what it does, because
Yep.
it's not it's not worth
Yep. And then if you
the thought.
contradict yourself the next day, that's just also cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like taking ourselves less seriously in the end. Like it's a kind of back and forth nature that's a fun little dance.
So, fun little dance makes me think about, there was obscure psychedelic drug I took, and I realized like, oh, maybe this isn't the best situation or place for me to done this. And I'm laying in bed, and I started feeling this like it was like this mean thing I just wanted to push away and get away, but I couldn't. But then I decided, what if I dance with it?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, it was like, they're like, yay.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, so where did my perception that this feeling was negative come from?
Right.
And it's so hard for us to look at. It's easy to look at kids and be cheerful and playful and happy with them. Looking at adults and talking to them and seeing them as something beautiful and looking for connection as well is a little bit harder, because adults are more potentially reactive when you try to like be too open and close to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I yeah, there's definitely like an innocence and a more openness, open-heartedness with kids, because they're not like formed yet into some kind of identity. And it does feel like adults, once they get sort of set in an identity, think this is the way I need to stay. And if anything tries to sort of break it, then I have to get really protective and keep people at arm's length, not open up too much, especially like folks of the opposite sex or, whatever. Like, what does this mean if I'm feeling connected to this person? And it's because of, beliefs about how relationships are supposed to work and stuff like that. It's messier and complicated because we can intellectualize it. And so that's again how we get in our own way,
Right. And I think the more we just live, like you're saying, as yourself, carefree, and that resonates with other like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in India and just being in this beautiful state of mind. And I was walking down this crowded street, and my eyes made contact with another person. And we recognized something on a deeper level. Just, it's hard to define just the way your eyes rest, the way your face rests. And we just beamed at each other. And we just walked by and just recognized, like, yes, there's something bigger than us.
Oh yeah.
That we were feeling, and it's like, and we helped each other also recognize that.
Yeah. Just in that simple act of smiling.
Yeah. And just meeting people like you and our friends, like, you'll find people that resonate if you're willing to resonate.
Because I feel like we're all magnets in some way. You know, we have that energy about us that can actually attract what is aligned with what, and it could be bad too. It could be, you know, some human that's gonna definitely teach you a lesson before they go, you know, and that could be just that energetic piece in you that needed that experience and sometimes isn't good as well.
Yeah, sometimes the repulsive magnets are a blessing.
Our medicine, yeah.
Yeah, they're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
You're like, how can this person go through life so angry? Well, he's doing his job.
Yes, exactly. Yep. I was just reading something that was talking about, maybe it's my favorite astrologer. When are we going to stop putting everything outside of us and start to turn more inwards? So in other words, bringing up current politics, you know, with so many people who hate on Trump, why don't we ask ourselves, what in me needs a villain in this life? Or where are ways that, you know, I am villainizing or have done evil, you know, in thought, word, and deed, or whatever. So it's more of like it doesn't discount, you know, maybe some shitty shit that somebody is doing, but it is also like, if we're talking energy here and resonance and stuff like that, seems to be the theme in this conversation today. How do you get your own energy right, you know? And so I just thought that was a cool.
That is so important because there's so much stress in the world right now of people feeling like everything is going the wrong way. And the news cycles, the social media, the algorithms push that because it's addictive. But there's always been something to push our buttons the wrong way since the beginning of time.
Yeah, there always will be.
And there always will be.
Yeah.
And without that, there's no process of us growing from one level and reconnecting with our truth.
Yeah. It's a little bit of an unfortunate reality and yet fortunate at the same time because
yeah. It's both.
It's both.
The world is everything.
Yeah. I think getting to that place of finally recognizing duality and being able to hold it is incredibly freeing, and also just returns you to your humanness, which I feel like is a recent state that I finally arrived at. Was like, oh good, I get to just be human again.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't always about like trying to strive or achieve or this or that or the other thing, or, you know, it's like, just be.
And that's who you are amidst all of this. And all of it is also tied to us and our energy. And it's so complex. It's so amazing. And that's where it's like, wow.
It's kind of mind blowing.
All the stuff that has happened in the world and has to happen for me to be at this space right now is
Yeah.
we don't have to be happy about the things or not try to change them, but they're still they're still part of life.
Yeah. Yep. It's what makes life beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right there we're going to stop.
I agree.
For today.
Yeah. That was wonderful.
And yeah, we'll talk again sometime.
Sweet. I would love it.
If you enjoyed this episode and you know somebody that might be inspired by it, share it with them. To learn more about the show, go to chasingthetimeless.com.